King Leopold II and the Congo Free State, 1885 to 1908. What if I told you the bloodiest empire in African history was created by a man who never set foot in it? What if civilization came wrapped in treaties traded for beads and cloth, and soldiers were paid in severed hands? And what if the most terrifying garden in history belonged to a European king, not because of its beauty, but because of the heads buried beneath the roses? Welcome to the story of King Leopold II and the Congo Free State, 1885 to 1908, a masterpiece of manipulation, empire building, and madness. This isn't your typical colonial documentary. This is a tale of obsession that begins with a crown and ends with millions dead. So, how did a young constitutional monarch, who couldn't even control his own parliament, become the sole owner of a territory 76 times the size of his country? Why did the civilized world cheer him on as he promised humanitarian reform, while secretly building the most brutal rubber empire of the century? And what exactly did Henry Morton Stanley do with over 500 Congolese chiefs, each signing away their ancestral lands for trinkets and promises? From the Berlin Conference and the scramble for Africa, to the rubber boom, brutal lashings, and the haunting rise of the force publique, we'll unearth the cruel genius behind Leopold's humanitarian facade. There's Leon Rahm, the man who decorated his flower bed with severed heads. There's George Washington Williams, the brave voice who risked everything to expose the crimes. And there's the pen, lifted by Mark Twain, Arthur Conan Doyle, and Joseph Conrad, that finally told the truth. Because when gold and ivory weren't enough, Leopold turned the Congo into a slaughterhouse, and history turned its gaze too late. So buckle up, this isn't just history. It's horror disguised as heroism, written in ink, rubber, and blood. Born in 1835, Leopold Louis-Philippe Marie Victor was the second but eldest surviving son of King Leopold I and Queen Louise of Orléans. His upbringing was steeped in royal protocol, diplomacy, and a hunger for influence. Belgium, having only recently gained independence from the Netherlands in 1830, was a fledgling constitutional monarchy. By the time Leopold II ascended the throne in 1865, Belgium was still defining its place in the world too. Despite being king, Leopold II had limited political power. The Belgian constitution ensured that real authority rested with parliament and elected officials. Leopold was a monarch in name, not in command. A ceremonial figurehead with grand ambitions, but few tools to realize them. Leopold II was consumed by a belief: a nation without colonies could never be truly great. He envied the imperial reach of Britain and France and saw colonialism as a path to wealth, prestige, and historical significance. But Belgium's government was staunchly opposed to colonial ventures, viewing them as outdated and morally questionable. Frustrated, Leopold decided to act alone. In the mid-19th century, sub-Saharan Africa was largely uncharted by Europeans, especially the vast interior of the Congo Basin. Leopold saw opportunity in this mystery. In 1876, he convened a geographical conference in Brussels, inviting explorers, scientists, and philanthropists. There, he proposed the creation of the Association Internationale Africaine, AIA, a supposedly humanitarian organization aimed at ending the East African slave trade and promoting free trade and civilization for. But this was a smokescreen. Leopold's true goal was to establish a private empire. The AIA soon morphed into the Comité d'études du Haut-Congo, and later the Association Internationale du Congo. These entities served as fronts for his colonial ambitions, giving him legitimacy while masking his intentions. In 1878, King Leopold II found his perfect instrument: Henry Morton Stanley, a Welsh-American journalist turned explorer. Stanley had already carved his name into history by famously locating the lost missionary David Livingstone in Africa, greeting him with the immortal line, "Dr. Livingstone, I presume?" But Stanley's adventures didn't end there. Between 1874 and 1877, Stanley had journeyed through the Congo Basin, mapping the river and its tributaries. He saw not just jungle and mystery, but economic gold in the form of ivory, rubber, and untapped labor. Leopold saw in Stanley a man who could turn dreams into dominion. In 1879, Stanley was hired under the guise of a humanitarian mission. His orders: build roads and bridges, establish trading posts, secure treaties with local chiefs. But these treaties were a farce. Chiefs, unaware of the implications, signed away their lands for a few yards of cloth, beads, or gin. They had no idea they were surrendering sovereignty to a foreign king. The flag of the Congo Association was raised, and with it, Leopold's empire began to take shape. Leopold wasn't the only European with eyes on Africa. The continent was being carved up like a feast at a royal banquet. This frenzy became known as the Scramble for Africa. To avoid war among themselves, European powers convened at the Berlin Conference, 1884 to 1885. Here, Leopold played a masterstroke of diplomacy. He presented himself as a benevolent ruler, promising to end the slave trade, promote free trade, protect native rights. It was all smoke and mirrors. Leopold walked away with international recognition of his claim to the Congo Basin, an area 8 times the size of Belgium. He renamed it the Congo Free State, though it was anything but free. The world was hungry for rubber, needed for bicycles, automobiles, and industrial machinery. The Congo had it in abundance. But harvesting wild rubber was labor-intensive and brutal. Leopold's solution: forced labor. Villagers were ordered to slash vines, rub latex on their skin, scrape it off into baskets. Failure to meet quotas led to beatings with the chicote, a whip made of hippopotamus hide. Mutilation, execution. Those who resisted were hunted down. Entire villages were razed. Leopold created the Force Publique, a private army of mercenaries and conscripts from Congo, Zanzibar, and West Africa. Their orders were clear: enforce quotas, suppress rebellion, and bring back severed hands as proof of kills, 1 hand for every bullet used. Hands became currency. Soldiers traded them to cover missed quotas. Some cut them from the living, others from the dead. Villages even waged war on each other to collect hands. Among the most notorious figures was Leon Rom, a Belgian officer in charge of the Force Publique at Stanley Falls. His reputation was monstrous. He decorated his garden with severed heads. He kept a gallows outside his home. He ruled with terror and impunity. Rom's cruelty was so infamous that he may have inspired Kurtz, the mad ivory trader in Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. In 1890, George Washington Williams, an African-American minister and historian, traveled to the Congo. What he saw horrified him. He penned an open letter to King Leopold, accusing him of crimes against humanity. Williams wrote, "Even though you have not set foot in the Congo, the crimes committed there are done in your name." Williams died on his journey home, but his letter lit a spark. By 1904, the European press began publishing exposés. The world was waking up. Writers and activists joined the chorus. Mark Twain wrote King Leopold's Soliloquy, a satirical takedown of the king's hypocrisy. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle published The Crime of the Congo, a scathing indictment. Joseph Conrad, having witnessed the horrors firsthand, wrote Heart of Darkness, a haunting allegory of imperial madness. The human cost: an estimated 10 million Congolese dead, half the population. The land was stripped, the people broken, and the king enriched. Leopold borrowed money from the Belgian government in 1889 and 1895, promising them the right to annex the Congo in 1901. But the government hesitated, allowing the nightmare to continue. Finally, in November 1908, under immense international pressure, Belgium forced Leopold to relinquish control. The Congo Free State became the Belgian Congo, ending the king's personal rule.